artificial intelligence will completely transform our world. But what is AI? Why will it affect you? And how can you and your business survive and thrive through the AI revolution? Welcome to AI and You. Here is your host, author, speaker, and futurist, Peter Scott.
Hello, we're on episode 291. These days, I like saying the number because it also makes some of my podcasting friends jealous. Yes, we've been at this for a while. And I'm talking with Jeff Riley, former Commissioner of Education for the state of Massachusetts, about the state of AI in America's classrooms. He has got master's degrees from Johns Hopkins and Harvard, was a Boston school principal, and as commissioner successfully navigated Massachusetts schools through COVID and other crises. Jeff is founder of a new organization, Day of AI, started by MIT's Responsible AI for Social Empowerment and Education Institute, or RAISE. Their Responsible AI for America's Youth campaign is now running across all 50 states and will run an event called America's Youth AI Festival in July 2026 in Boston. Last week, we talked about what that campaign is doing and how teachers are responding to it, risks of AI and social media to kids, and what to do about cheating and AI detectors. This week, we're going to talk about how he sees the AI education of teachers evolving, responsible use of AI by students, differentiated learning, making AI in classrooms safe for teachers and students, the impact of AI on educational inequalities, the future of educational reform, and how you can get involved in AI in schools. So let's get back to the interview with Jeff Riley. When ChatGPT came out, I set my 2 children up with it straight away, and I said, here is something that you can talk with that can answer any question. Sometimes it is wrong. So are adults. That is part of the reality of this, but you can engage with it in a way that you could if you had an adult with those skills around, but most often you won't. And so they've gotten used to it. And also we share the same paid account so I can see the sort of questions that they're asking.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot talked about the risk to learning through, say, cognitive offloading. And some of these studies have come out of not a million miles from you at MIT. And that's where the distinction between the school and the workplace really matters, because the workplace doesn't care whether you learn anything or not. They just want the job done as quickly as possible. If AI accelerates that, if AI can do that, great. But in the school, we care about them learning. We care about the student coming out of the other end of this process a different and better person than they went in. And so it's in their interests to have them do things which AI could do, even could do better, because of the way it builds up their skills. And we are at the early stages of discovering how the use of that impacts the ways in which we learn. How do you approach that, given that we don't know all the answers? It'll be who knows when before we know all the answers, but we have to do something now. What do you do?
So the way we think about this is kids need to have a knowledge base. What we recognize that sometimes ChatGPT or Gemini, whatever you're using, can be helpful. But we also need to make sure that kids have long-term memory, and we need to have these discussions about what's important and maybe what's not important. And let me give you a couple of examples. My kids are in their 20s now, but when they went to the Boston public schools all through schooling, they never learned cursive. Okay, maybe that's okay. Nobody told me that was going to happen, but fair enough. I guess you don't really need cursive in this day and age. Fair enough. As I said, my kids were born in Boston. They've been raised in Boston. They've lived in Boston their whole lives. They can't get anywhere in the city without Waze or another GPS program. I can get everywhere in the city of Boston because I needed to know landmarks and street signs when I was younger. So I have a spatial relationship skill that they don't have. Is that okay or not okay? Some people might say maybe it's okay. Some people might say maybe not. Well, now we have some people saying, oh, well, ChatGPT can just teach, do the writing for the kids. They don't need to learn to write. I fight everywhere I go against this because writing to me is thinking. Kids need to have a knowledge base and they need to be able to order their thoughts. And so that is a bridge too far for me, right? And if we offload everything to this technology, our kids could become drones, right? Their brains could atrophy, and we could be left in a situation where kids don't have the capacity to fight back against ChatGPT when it might be giving them a bad answer. They don't have a knowledge base to question what's happening, right? And so I think this is such a powerful technology. We're just at the beginning of it. The way I look at this is, well, my two kids, I didn't just throw them the car keys when they turned 16. I put them in driver's education class, and then I white-knuckled in the front seat with both of them as they tried to learn how to drive. AI is more powerful than any car you're going to give your kid, right? And so we need to do a good job of making sure that our kids are AI literate and understands the pros and cons of this, and almost that they pass a test before we let them use it. And part of that means, like, kids, to me, should have to prove that they have an adequate knowledge base and can read, write, think, and work collaboratively. What that can look like, I don't know. We can talk about it. It's an important thing to talk about. But I think there should be some kind of measure by which we say we feel a kid is now able to use this tool effectively as a tool and not instead just offload or give up your mental brain power to this technology. And so we need to discuss when that is and what that looks like.
And if you developed your spatial awareness in Boston, given its topology, it must be unusually well developed. Developed mine in England, where there are no straight lines. So,
well, we appreciate that too. Yeah.
I understand. And what you're describing there about that learning process, we don't have that problem when it comes to physical things. No student is going to think that they can learn tennis from a conversation with ChatGPT. They all get that you need to practice it to get that. Why is it such a hard thing to understand that that also applies in situations where you're not swinging a racket?
Yeah, I think because it's just so ubiquitous with kids on cell phones and they just have access to this right away, right? And I think, like, look, we talked earlier about some of the potential mental health challenges that came about by social media and cell phones and the like. And I would argue that precluded our kids from, in many ways, going out and swinging a tennis racket or going out with their friends, right? It's easier to play a video game with your friends online and never actually see them. And as the former commissioner of education, during my last year, we put out a grant to restrict or ban cell phone use in schools. And I had the superintendents call me, probably 5 or 6 in the first 2 weeks after implementation, with the same message. Jeff, they're talking to each other in the lunchroom again. Like, that's pretty scary, right? Like, I mean, there's a person from the Rhythm Project, Michelle Culver. She has some really astounding information about where this could go with AI, where kids can literally go through their day now just talking to their AI companion and not talking to another human being. They've got their earbuds in and they talk to their companion in the morning and at lunch, and then they talk to them at night, and they actually never make true human connections. And what she's saying is, with that and the rise of robotics, like, we may see falling birth rates. We may see people not getting married. We might see this kind of weird dystopian future. And so that, to me, is why it's really critical to involve everybody in this conversation. And it's strange that people aren't more worried about it and talking about it more, because this thing is coming in a fast and furious way.
And it's hit education first and hardest.
Yeah.
You said that you start with high school students, and my experience of trying to get any of their time has been interesting. They are already fully subscribed. What kind of demands are you making upon their time? And how do you succeed at getting that into a schedule which is already full?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. Right now, we're working with teachers and talking to them about infusing AI tools and practices into their curriculum already. Whatever you're already teaching, we can show you how to bring that in and maybe augment that in a way. We are starting to see some schools offer AI-specific electives. We're starting to see some schools hire AI directors to start thinking about this. But I think because of the ubiquity of it, we're in a situation where I'm not sure it can be just seen as one standalone subject. I think 20 years from now, it's just going to be part and parcel of what teachers do. It's going to be in their pedagogy. But you have a situation now where as we said earlier, some teachers are well versed in the tech already, some are not. We also have a situation where our high school kids are pretty savvy technological users, and they're actually more skeptical than you would think about AI, because I think they've gone through some of those social media travails and they've seen what it's done to some of their peers. So in some ways, they are great skeptics. I'm more worried about the younger kids who didn't live through that at this point, and how do we make sure they understand that whatever technology you're using, it has some pluses, but also it has some drawbacks as well.
And you started to get into the way that this can play out in the future, which reminds me that you talked about teachers, and everyone is in a different place about this with respect to the level of competence that they already have, the level of motivation, openness, and so forth that they have. And in order to manage training, you have to know where people are to begin with. If we were dealing with any specific subject and you said, well, we need, for instance, to get someone's math competency up, you'd say, well, where are they at right now? And you would be able to peg that to a specific grade level. And if they come out at grade 7, we'd say, great, here's the grade 8 textbook and exam. We don't have anything like that for AI. And yet we surely must be heading in a direction of establishing some kind of standard of AI literacy for teachers and students. I work with the UNESCO competency frameworks as rubrics for that, where you can see how to take someone to the next level. You can establish standards for where people, teachers and students and school leaders should be on that. How do you see this playing out? We don't have anything close to that as far as I can tell.
Well, if you go to our website, you can see our curriculum materials K-12. And so that can really help people begin to understand some of the possibilities. I'm going tomorrow to train down on Cape Cod, I think about 100 administrators. And I'm going to show them specific examples about how you can think about AI. I'll give them an 8th grade science standard on engineering. And we'll play with Tonka trucks and the building process, and we'll go through the design process with them based on the standards and the frameworks. And then I'll show them how I emailed this particular lessons on the Big Dig, which was a building project in Massachusetts where they put the elevated highway under the ground. And so they get to play with Tonka trucks, and because we love play. But what I do is I send different people a summary written at a different grade level on the Big Dig. It all talks about the Big Dig, but one is written at a 2nd grade level, one is written at an 8th grade level, and one is written at a college level. Because oftentimes in class, you have kids with a wide range of abilities. And although we say we differentiate instruction, it's super hard to do that if you're a teacher until now. Now, you can beam an article on the Big Dig written at a 2nd grade level to that one kid who's a lower level reader. You can beam another article written at a college level to the kid that's a high level reader and give the other kids kind of middle grade material. And then they can all do the activity together. And you're keeping kids that would have been drowning and not know what's going on engaged. You're taking the other kids that maybe say, this is too easy, I'm bored, engaged. And now they can all do the lesson together based on the state standard. And so there's a way to differentiate now. And teachers are like, oh my God, I wanted to be able to do something like this, but for the first time, I can do this like that.
Exactly.
Right? And without embarrassing a kid, you can send it to their tablet. Nobody's going to know which article the kid has, but now they'll have some background information on the Big Dig and engineering and design, and there you go.
And it can be differentiated for that student's first language, reading comprehension level, neurodiversity, and so on. And we're talking here about the education of a topic like a curriculum and approaching AI as the technology. But I'm thinking specifically about the pedagogical impact, the way that it must be changing what we do in the classrooms, how we teach. And that is a point where teachers are in many different places. Some of them have experimented with it and created exercises and other ways. No matter what their topic, they're seeing how to use AI as part of that process and how to engage with students on whether and how they use AI. And teachers are at very different places in their journey with what they do and what they understand about that. That is something that we have to negotiate together. How do you work to establish where teachers are in that journey so that they know where the next step is? Because we find schools where the teaching body can be at a more advanced place than others with respect to that, and coming in at ground zero of here is how you talk to an AI is like, no, we did that 6 months ago.
Yeah, so I think what we've seen is, I would say 70% of our schools and districts feel like, because the topic is so new, that we want to start at the very beginning. And even if some people know this information, start there, and then everyone can kind of receive the same information writ large. However, there's probably 30% of the districts where we're able to differentiate instruction for them and work with different groups of teachers, some who may be more advanced and some who maybe really need the basics. And so we do that as well, and we're able to support in that way. It's sometimes more people intensive on our end because you're running 2 different training sessions simultaneously, or 3 or whatever the number is going to be. But we're willing to work with districts because we recognize the variability and knowledge base on this is vast. And we're trying to be customer service oriented. We want to meet schools, districts, principals, and teachers where they're at. And then sometimes you find that people say they're not experts, but they know more than they think they know, right? And vice versa. So we're willing to work with districts in schools to customize for what they see best. But I also think that once we start training with people, we come to some conclusions like, oh, okay, this was right. Or no, actually, they're a little bit more advanced than we thought. Or no, we need to back up and start at the very beginning, as any teacher would do.
That's a really good point. There can be teachers who are quite competent in what they need to be able to do with AI, but because there's so much that they know that they don't know, they wonder whether any of that is necessary, and so they hold themselves back. Something you say that in your materials that I very much resonate with is you say students must do more than have a say. They should lead the charge. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so part of our tour this year, as I mentioned, ends back at MIT, where we're really spotlighting student leadership. How we've got challenges out there. If you go to our website, all you have to do is, by the way, if you do go to dayofai.org, is type in your email address. Don't worry, we won't spam you or sell your information. And you can get behind the curtain and see all this information. But some of the challenges are like, there's an AI in the arts challenge. There's an AI for a better world where kids try to solve real world problems using AI. And we're going to kind of take the best projects that we find from across the country and celebrate those kids and have them come to MIT this July. And they're going to get to interact with some of the top educators in the country and in the world. And they're going to be able to show off what they're doing.
And this really illustrates, I think, how the model of innovation in education has been turned on its head, because that process of change happening through ministries or departments of education, pushing new ideas down to districts, getting those from longitudinal studies in universities, schools of education, they're now moving far too slowly to do what we need. And the classrooms, every classroom has now been turned into a research lab for AI in education, because you can't avoid it. You could ban AI from the classroom. It wouldn't make any difference because of the kids that would be using it or the kids that should be using it, because they're going into a world where their promotion and compensation is based to a large degree upon AI competency. So they should know these tools. They should be trained in them.
Well, and the fact that we can use the whole country, the whole world as a lab, every classroom has the potential to offer up an exemplar lesson, right? That people can share, that we can build a repository. That's more powerful than if it was a top-down, everybody do the same thing. Let's go share our best practices. Teachers would walk over broken glass if they could get something that they could use in their classroom. Imagine having access to the best lessons in the world that are infusing AI into them that now you can do with your kids, right? I think it could be a powerful model. And what we're trying to do is really raise up some great exemplars in the field, both from kids and from teachers.
How do you make that environment of innovation safe for the teachers? Because teachers, and especially school leaders, must be scared that they're going to do something that turns out to be a mistake on the order of giving every student a TikTok and Snapchat account and saying, go ahead, that level of risk to their mental, psychological welfare, or other kinds of missteps that there are potentially. How do you put guardrails or safety frameworks around the teachers so that they know how they can innovate, what's safe to do?
Yeah, we've been working a lot with district technology coordinators about data sharing. Right now, there are 1,000 different AI products being peddled to schools all over the world. And sometimes they're for free, but my experience is nothing's ever for
Right.
free, and they might be mining the kids' data. So in America, where we've been just catching up to the fact that like we shouldn't have our kids' student data being accessed by big tech or anybody else. So we got to start from a place of kids' safety, right? I always think of it as Maslow before Bloom. What are the basic needs we need to have met for our kids? Food, housing, mental health, safety, and AI is going to be a part of that. So how do we make sure that we've created a framework within a school where kids are protected, their data is protected, and they're not subject to bad actors or whatever's happening out there? And I would also say on the other side of it is teachers should go at their own pace. They shouldn't feel pressed to punch above their weight. They should just start small and go from there and just kind of work with other teachers to share best practices. The biggest experts we have in the field are our teachers. And the reality is we've handcuffed them with all of this bureaucratic administrative minutia. We need to trust them because they know what's happening in classrooms. We need to kind of set them free, take away a lot of that administrative minutia, let them get back to the business of building great lessons, right? And then sharing them with their peers. And I promise you, there'll be mistakes made along the way, but the results will amplify tenfold. There's a professor at Harvard, he passed away during COVID. His name was Dick Elmore. And he always talked about this idea that task predicts performance. And what he said was, scores will go up if kids aren't just learning a standard, but have a high quality task or activity married to that standard. And he did a lot of work in Canada, actually, where the districts that were doing really well, they had a lot of time to build great tasks or exciting activities that are tied to the standard. And imagine a world where teachers have the time and space to build these great lessons and share these great lessons. Will there be some mistakes made along the way? Absolutely. But we're going to have better output by having more time to unleash their potential in the classroom rather than handcuffing them with all of this administrative minutia.
Yeah, a lot of teachers applauding you there. Also, AI very good at generating and handling bureaucratic minutia for you.
Correct.
A question for you. Does AI increase or decrease social and economic inequities between schools and students?
Well, it depends on how we implement it. It has the ability, in my opinion, to cut across and be more democratic than any technology has ever been before. And what I mean by that is this technology can profoundly impact kids with special needs, kids learning English as their first language, kids living in poverty who may have seen thousands of less words growing up than their more affluent suburban peers. This could be a great equalizer if done well and done across the board for everybody. But it could also be the kind of thing where the elite and the wealthy have their kids do AI and the other kids don't have access to it. So it could increase those inequalities or it could decrease them. And I think what's going to happen is largely going to be determined by who we are and what we do as we roll this out. And let me give you an example that we're getting a lot of calls right now from community colleges. And I think they're smartly offering up AI programming for kids and degrees, almost as if they're like the college for vocational schools, except the vocation is AI. Well, my guess, if they do that well, those kids, despite the fact that they're only going to a 2-year college, are going to be more marketable in the workplace than some kid that has a liberal arts degree from a 4-year program who might be a barrister at Starbucks right now, right? And so this could upend everything we know and we think we know about education. We talk a lot about the 3 R's in education: reading, writing, and arithmetic. Okay, well, we're going to stretch that to a 4th R: reading, writing, arithmetic, and artificial intelligence skills, right? I think that's going to be as important as those other 3 things.
Oh, I like that. That hadn't come to me before, but a 4th R, artificial. You had to sound like a pirate to do that. But yeah, it works.
Exactly.
It works, doesn't it?
Cool.
And that brings up the whole conversation about future of work and what universities should be doing that we really just don't even have the time to open up here. We'll have to have you back for that. Let's move towards the end here by looking into the future. understanding that, of course, by definition, with disruption, we can't see the future. That's kind of the point of it. But that we're also working towards some goals and ideals here of how we transform education in the light of this new capability here. So if you look to, say, 5 years from now, and your work has been as successful as you could hope for, what does the new model of education look like in terms of, well, the differences from now? How are classrooms different? How is learning different? Curricula? Let's just assume that these schools are moving a lot faster than the usual 10 years to change a curriculum by that point, and everything that you would like to see happen is taking place.
So let me start from a strange place, maybe. I told you at the beginning I have 2 children, but when I speak to American schools, this may not happen in Canada and other places, I ask the teachers, how many of you have children? Usually 70% of the audience will raise their hand. And I say, how many of you would like 2 more? Very few people raise their hand for that. They don't want my kids. And that's okay. And I say, okay, let's role play for a minute. Your own children come home from school and you say, how was school today? And they say,
fine.
Good or fine, both acceptable. Well done. What'd you learn today? In America, the kids say nothing.
Yep.
Now, some of that is teenage angst. But some of that is because we have handcuffed our teachers and not given them the time and space to use their great talents and imaginations to build exciting, engaging lessons. That they've been like mandated to do this. And I think the future could look like a place where people are excited to go back into the field of teaching, where they have autonomy to express themselves and build great lessons and really reach kids in a way they never could before, because a lot of the administrative burden has been taken off of them. And they're building these high quality, engaging tasks, married to the standard, to be sure, that when the kid comes home, he'll say, Mom, Dad, you won't believe what we did in school today. It was awesome. Right? And that's my dream. That's why I'm more excited about education now than I've ever been before. I think we've done 30 years of education reform. The first 15 years kind of worked. Test scores went up, but we didn't flatter down for the last 15. And I think we need something new. And I think trusting our teachers and giving them the tools to get back to the business of teaching is going to have a profound effect. And underneath this is this technology can help get us there.
Well, and at the risk of detracting from what is a wonderful conclusion there, but we'll have another one. How do you see the potential for differentiated learning changing the profile of classroom activities here? Do you see that still being the same ratios of lecture to experiment to discussion and so forth? Or where does that third relationship of student to AI come in, of how they use that in ways that weren't possible in education before?
So I think in the beginning, we're just going to kind of infuse this tool into our toolbox in education along the same lines that we've done it. And that's perfectly okay. But I think when teachers start realizing what they can do, that they can literally set up profiles of their kids. This one kid likes soccer. This other kid is crazy about the flute. And they can start having AI design specific targeted lessons, still on the same standard, but towards that kid where they're better able to reach them. It's going to be a profound change, I think. And it's going to make a school better for kids who will get a more personalized experience than they actually could have ever before this.
Indeed. Well, we've got to wrap this up now. What's coming up on your calendar? What are you looking forward to that we should know about?
Listen, I just love going out and working with teachers. I think in this imperfect world we live in, teachers never get the honor that they're due. And I've done this for 3 decades, and to show teachers how we can make their lives easier and at the same time give them some of their lives back. People sometimes think, oh, you get your summers off and you only work till 3 o'clock. People don't understand what it means to be a teacher. And this technology can really help with some of that burden, but also unleash them at the same time and their creativity. So for me, it's just been a blessing. I feel like I've been reborn after 30 years of your traditional education. I'm more excited now about school than I have been in the past.
Ditto. What a time to be alive. Where can our listeners find out more about you, the work that you and your organization are doing and events like the America's Youth AI Festival?
Yeah, so if you go to dayofai.org or dayofaiusa.org, you can just punch in your email address and get behind the curtain for all of our supplies and materials, free curriculum, parent toolkit to help parents understand AI, a lot of the challenge stuff we're doing for the summer in July back here in Boston. And if you're interested in trainings, how you can sign up with us and how we can come support you in the work, you can reach me personally at Jeff, Jeff, at dayofai.org. I have no life. I always answer the emails within 24 hours. And yeah, happy to support people in any way we can.
Well, Jeff Riley, thank you so much for coming on AI and You, and especially thank you for answering the call to come and help the teachers and students understand and work with AI at this critical point in their educational journey.
Thanks so much for having me.
Terrific. Thank you. And that's the end of the interview. I especially loved his 4 R's of reading, writing, arithmetic, and artificial intelligence, not least because it gives you a chance to use your pirate voice. And it's not abusing the spelling alignment any more than it was already. We should make this one stick. In today's news, ripped from the headlines about AI, Google researchers published a paper on what they are calling nested learning, an alternative to the large language model, which is more closely aligned with the human brain's model of learning. It essentially breaks the artificial neural network's architecture into nested groups of digital neurons that update their weights at different frequencies based on how surprising any given piece of information is compared to what that part of the model would have predicted. The parts that update their weights more slowly form the longer-term memory of the model, while the parts that update their weights more frequently form a kind of shorter-term working memory. And nested between them are blocks of neurons that update at a medium speed, which modulates between the shorter and longer-term memories. This is all tickling my admittedly incomplete understanding of how the brain is organized into cortical columns. It would be really nice to see this or something like it take over from the transformer before we get too many diminishing returns from transformer models. Next week, I'll be talking with Jose Antonio Bowen and C. Everett Watson, authors of the book Teaching with AI, a practical guide to a new era of human learning, which just published its 2nd edition. That's next week on AI and You. Until then, remember, no matter how much computers learn how to do, it's how we come together as humans that matters.
That's all for this episode of AI and You. Please leave a rating and comment and share with your friends. Get the book Artificial Intelligence and You and see more videos and articles at aiandyou.net. That's aiandyou.net, where you can also send us your questions. Thank you for listening.